Доброго дня всім, хто зібрався. Бачу, що вже є
Good afternoon to everyone who is already present. I can see that all the key participants are gathered, so I think we shall start
подію.
our event.
Тож, вітаю вас на
So
події
welcome
Національна стратегія доходів, майбутнє
to
розпочнути
our
реформи податкової
event,
наповнення
the
бюджету. Сьогодні в нас представники
National
Міністерства
Revenue
фінансів
Strategy, the future of the simplified
поділяться думками
tax
про цей
reform,
документ, який
filling the budget.
буде
So we will have the participants, the attendees who will share their vision on the important document that will determine the policy in tax and revenue strategy until the end of next year. Let's try to be as short as possible so we can have a very good and fruitful discussion. If we have any questions to the speakers, please leave the questions in the Q&A session in Zoom. In case you have just comments or just position which you want to announce, which doesn't pertain to this particular subject of discussion, but it refers to the tax or customs policy, please write that in chat. We will all publish all the important ideas as the minutes of our event on our website, and we'll pass it.
Translation in the bottom panel of Zoom. Simultaneous translation is available. І також запис цього обговорення буде
Also, the discussion of this,
Центру економічної
the recording of this discussion will be on YouTube, on the YouTube site of the Center of and Economic Strategy.
Ефективна політика управління публічними фінансами та візія зростання.
We are doing also it together with the colleagues who are supported by the government of Great Britain. The implementators are colleagues from Britain and the Center of Economic Strategy. Let me make a very short introduction and I will pass the floor to our participants. We have Serhiy Marchenko, the Minister of Finances of Ukraine. We also have Svitlana, Deputy Minister of Finances, also the colleague from the who's important in terms of the tax policy of Ukraine. Also, we have Danylo, the CEO of OKO, Olena Volska, the managing partner, and Anton Kharitonov, the representative of the National Restaurant Association of Ukraine. So let's put it very briefly. On the 27th of December, the government concurred the national revenue strategy. I think this is very much important from the point of view of having enough expectations, enough prospects, because a lot we are used to having a lot of things that are happening very unexpectedly. So it's important that the government is communicating their long-term vision, and the business can, well in ahead, evaluate these changes on their activity, get ready, and understanding that this is a strategy, not the law. So it's a good impetus for the discussion and for this conversation. The strategic objectives is the macro stability, the decreasing of the need in the external financing. We can talk even more about some medium-term horizon. And one of the strategic goals is the adaptation of the legislation of Ukraine to the European, and we can see a lot of steps all over the strategy, which consists of four main blocks. That's the tax administration. That's where I would talk about the improving the taxation compliance and the plans related to the mandatory filing of the auditors' files by all big participants and by all other VAT payers. This is the approach which is used right now for the administering in many European countries. Implementation of the automated system of controlling for the turnover of alcohol, tobacco, and the system of electronic traceability, and a number of changes that pertain to the improvement of the procedure for the processing, analysis, of the RRO data, working with the taxation, also the changes in administration, digitalizations, and some organizational issues. In the taxation policy, the main blocks pertain to the taxation of revenues. So that's about the simplified system. That's the progressive rate of the income tax rates with the neutral social benefits, also the investment stimulation through the immediate depreciation, also considering all our international obligations, also indirect taxes, the harmonization of the legislation. What concerns the VAT with the European, in the first place, that's cancellation of the lowered rates and benefits which are not foreseen by the EU directive, and the gradual increase of excises for fuel, alcohol, tobacco to the minimum acceptable. In the customs administrations, there are quite a lot of other steps with the focus on strengthening institutional capacity of customs and the international cooperation. And we have a number of changes in the customs policy what concerns the special taxation for the imports, also harmonization with the European Union, and a little bit more controversial changes is the development of the law enforcement function. There's been a proposition to give the function to the customs authorities to do some pre-court investigations, to do some investigations related to counterfeiting of goods. And in order not to speak all the way through, but rather to give the word to the persons who are invited to this, I would like to invite Serhiy Marchenko as the Minister of Finance of Ukraine with his introduction, and after all the speakers will say what they have to say, we will come to Q&A. Serhiy, the floor is yours. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, all the participants. Let's discuss this important document. I think, yes, it is exactly very fundamental, irrespective of the fact that we are getting quite a critical evaluation of the national strategy over the last period of time, which is explained. I can explain this logically with the absence of the communication, but now we are ready to discuss this document. We can discuss it for a long time. All the innovations we can discuss which are foreseen there, because I would like to emphasize that this document is not a law, it's a roadmap for changes which are envisaged. We, as the Ministry of Finances, are envisaging to be introduced until 2030. We have some discrepancies, some critical moments, so this is exactly the document for discussion, and we are ready for this discussion, and we are ready to make a really wide discussion and to engage the maximum possible number of participants. Now, closely to the essence and our vision. First of all, it's the document. This has been demanded by our partners. This is a document which is also the fiscal block for which we are responsible. Exactly on this document, it is based both for our partners and for us. This document is fundamental, and the execution of this document has been a structural beacon. We should have done it until December 2023. The work over this document started in March 2023. It included numerous international meetings, internal discussions, and naturally, for us, it's been a key to meet the new year already with this document. So it was a very principled position to take this document into account, accept it, adopt it, and to fulfill the structural beacons. So all of our actions, all of them are mentioned exactly with this. This document foresees the main aspects which I wanted to characterize the following. This document includes the changes related to the change of the taxation policy, as well as aimed at improving the performance of the fiscal authorities. I would like to stop a little bit more here and to concentrate your attention exactly on this point. We believe, and we believe that we were able to convince our international partners. So until the moment, until we create enough grounds, enough level of trust for the taxpayers to fiscal authorities, any taxation innovations, any changes in the taxation modes shall not be applied, and we are very much principled. We will not do that until the moment, until we complete the first stage. The first stage envisages the maximum improving of effectiveness of fiscal authorities and the maximum improvement of integrity, anti-corruption approach, interaction with the taxpayers on the acceptable conditions, the ones that stimulate the voluntary payment of taxes. One of these elements of this measures is the depersonification of the work of the taxation office with the taxpayers. The taxation office will not have the possibility to directly interact with the taxpayers until the moment when when we detect certain risks that will really call for the necessity for a more detailed work with the system of risks. And in the due course, this also provides for the data protection, and we would like to tell you that the security component and the security protection of the personal data is one of the fundamental elements of the strategy. So once again, I emphasize, until we implement this protection of personal data and depersonification of the taxation office, no further measures for the simplified system, for the income tax of individuals, any other measures of the taxation policy, we will not do, because this will undermine trust to this strategy, it will undermine trust to our plans, and we are very much clear and we understand that the system of work of the fiscal authorities shall be significantly improved. That's my short introduction. Which kind of plans we had, why now, why in this particular way, why we didn't have that much of a public discussion and any other aspects. Many thanks, Serhiy. I would like to also, actually, I wanted to ask questions after all the performances, but let me quickly ask you a clarifying question. In reality, the measures which are in the taxation, in the customs policy, they critically depend on the reforms in administration. This is the connection which is very much seen. But how exactly will you measure the success or failure of these steps in the reform of the tax administration? Which do you have any clear sequence of what will not be started or will be delayed if this reform turns out a little bit less successful? Which will be KPIs? We will see by the question that it really does make a lot of concern for the representatives of business. Thank you, Yuri. The majority of experts, unfortunately, have not read this document. If they did read through very attentively, they would understand the logical connections which are in this document. For instance, when we talk about reforming of this simplified system, it's section about the strategy. It's 431. In this, we have the regulation which foresees which changes will be gradually implemented. Only after we will implement and we will believe that it will be fulfilled, all the measures which I mentioned in 423 about the security of the people when they make transactions, only after the implementation of these provisions about the change of the IT system and the reforming of IT system. So we were very conscious in going to changes and to the evaluation of these changes on the side of taxpayers, together joint evaluation because if we go through the situation when in the beginning of 2025, if we are not ready to implement these changes, because the level of trust to the personal data protection, to the personal taxation office centers, if it still remains very low, if the level of integrity remains low, we will discuss this. I think we will have a lot of surveys with the taxpayers, and only then we will have some decisions about implementing further actions, either the calibration of the existing strategy, because it is not a set in stone document, but also we should be aiming at certain objectives when we do reach objectives of stage 1, because without the trust to fiscal authorities, any further actions of the taxation policies will simply not work. Let me quickly add, if you don't mind, allow me, please, just a few words. I'd like to add to what has been said, but Serhiy, well, first of all, happy holidays, and thank you for inviting. Thank you for inviting, although I'm not in the office right now. But the question which is asked right now in the chat and which has been mentioned now, in which way shall we measure these or those indicators which on which the further execution of strategy depend? I mean, not only the continuation of, but really the start of the changes in the taxation policy, whatever concerns the simplified system. Exactly for this, in order for us to have very clear indicators, clear understanding when this or that particular condition has been fulfilled in terms of the reforms. On page 121, we see the table. This is the indicators of execution of the measures of the national strategy and the operative plan of the implementation of the strategy. And that's where for each item, including 4.2.3, about which Serhiy mentioned, that's the digitalization of data, which is the condition of the start of the reforming of the simplified system. There are also indicators, the execution of which will certify that this particular measure has been fulfilled in a way that it has been foreseen in the strategy. And from this will depend our obligations for the further reformation. Until this is done, we will not be obliged in front of our donors, our partners, international partners, to fulfill the strategy. We will continue to work on the item 1. That's how it's built. This was the logic built inside, so it's also clearly understood by those who are fulfilling it. So you can not only calculate, but also use KPIs for the evaluation of how the strategy is being fulfilled. Thank you, Svitlana. Then now I would like to pass the floor to Danylo Hetmantsev, the chief of the committee for the customs and tax policy. Danylo, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Happy holidays, colleagues. I would like to start off by saying thanks to the team of the Ministry of Finances and other state authorities for this very well-grounded document, for this very heavy work, very contentful work that's been done by the ministry throughout a significant period of time. And it also seems to me that the most important in this national revenue strategy is not that it's not only the structural beacon of the memorandum. And we're not talking about any point-to-point changes, something that is being discussed. Something that is this is the main document that is bringing the public discussion from the point where it is and where it was at the level of social networks, pseudo-experts, and some fantastic groundbreaking ideas from the non-science layer to a real work aimed at improving and setting the taxation system of our state. And as it often happens, as it was commented by Serhiy, if you go deeper into this 150 pages, you can see that this is the plan of the systematic work aimed at reforming all the system of authorities in the sphere of public revenues. And that's very important because those institutional changes that we see in the taxation services and in the customs services that pertain to reforming these institutions, they are written not with the language of mottos as it has been, but very concrete steps which are well thought through and which are already implemented in certain steps and with the necessity that will bring towards the positive changes. First of all, what I would like to this automatic system of managing risks. This is the risk-oriented approach about which we said so long, but which was not implemented at all. So this is the approach. First of all, it is implemented throughout 2023 in the tax and partially in the customs authorities, and even in our law. We have renewed checks not for all, and we have renewed them only for those who have an increased degree of risks. So it's very concrete steps in the structure of the taxation services. It's realized, and we understand that the taxation control for the taxpayers who are honest and they have the positive taxation story, it has to be one. And for the risk ones, I mean, not in terms of VAT, meaning from the negative tax history, it has to be quite harsh. So to make the checks of all taxpayers from A and all the way to the lunch, this should go away into the past. We understand that. So we have to understand, and we have a very clear roadmap how to do it. And also the structural changes which must be done, and the structural changes in the customs, in the tax office, and in the Ministry of Finances. And it's also in the context of the taxation policy. We can discuss as much as we want the second, the taxation policy and those proposals that we have. But they are in the context of our European integration. They are in the part of the European accession documents, our main objective for the upcoming 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Therefore, the document is very much well-grounded. It is a really good way for the discussion. That's a good document, and that's most important. That brings this discussion from the point of view of non-scientific science fiction to the professional discussion by experts. That is, those people who at least read it. Hopefully they read something before that. And for that, I'm very much thankful to the Ministry of Finances for this work and to the government for supporting the Ministry of Finances. I believe that this has been a very powerful step ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Danylo. Ms. Svitlana, do you want to say something? Or will we move that to Svitlana, the Deputy Minister of Finances? I think it will be more productive if I reply to some specific questions, because I can really tell you the whole strategy. We are not here for that. Most of it has been already said. And then, of course, it will be the details which should be discussed, start to discuss, because I agree with Serhiy and Danylo that this is not the law. This is the document which should start the discussion. And it is written in such a way, in such a style, that we don't have the complete concepts. We have the direction of reform, and then it will be necessary to work a lot on that, to work together with the society, with the this will also be a very deep and great discussion. So I suggest really the question. I would like to give the floor to the representatives of non-governmental institutions. I apologize about that I did not introduce Ihor. Ihor Diadiura is the expert from deregulation, and I would like to ask all speakers to be as laconic as possible. Welcome, welcome with all, and happy holidays. Very happy to see all my colleagues, Serhiy, Svitlana, very much happy for this invitation. I would like to say immediately that I read this strategy 3 times. I did not push to be here on this event, but I was invited. The strategy has a lot of pluses. It's good that it's here. It demonstrates the intentions. It's for a long period of time. We can work with it, and it's a big plus. And from our events, it's good that we are combining you in the Ministry of Finances. The timing is short, so I will speak about what I don't like. You can take it or leave it, definitely. I believe that it's very correct that what has been declared is to bring the revenues of individuals out of shadow. That's very good. But I don't like the idea to destroy the bank secret. I believe, please don't write it. I will really send it to all of you. I simply don't have time now to read this. We have the constitutional way, Article 67. It says that all individuals should file the declarations. Only 170,000 did last year. So the declaration is not taking place in Ukraine. The way that all banks are bringing the information to the Ministry of Finances without any personifications. I was working in the bank and seeing what happened with Kyivstar. They have a very powerful team, but it simply doesn't work that way. But to make right now, without waiting, closing of the war and the victory, to give the access to the banks to checking the declarations and to give them the possibility to work with their clients. See, you guy, look, you have 1 million on your account, but you didn't even file any declaration. That's where we could work on. And also the responsibility for non-filing the declaration, 340 hryvnia. I have seen how it is in Europe, how it is in the United States. It's just a little bit not like that. The proposed option to work with the big companies, then they're making up schemes. We have discussed it several times with Danylo. In 2021, the government brought this in. We have discussed it with various associations. It was recommended to be adopted in the first reading, but nothing has been done over 3 years. 50 for 1. How in Europe, the Maltese criteria the Californian criteria, the criteria of labor relations. It is written very clearly how they divide the big business or from the person who is working, who is self-employed. Don't wait until the end of the war. Take it, read it, and let's discuss it again. This has to be done. I would also add here, I was trying to sort out about this golden age. Everybody is using FOPs for the. It's not good to have this FOPs. We should introduce some VAT groups for this. So in this particular section, I'm very much worried that it's written already what will be, that there will be VAT for the, I mean, it's 32 pages. It's simply not easy for them to fill it out. It's only for the big taxpayers. So this we should check, because it says that it will be, but then they say that they will study the European experience and hopefully it will be different. The big blocks, that's RRO. I'm welcoming that we are going away from the NBU technology, going online. That's absolutely great. That's absolutely correct. I welcome what will be done. The analytics, it should have been done from, because we're working since 1995. In 2019, we said that there is analytics. Now they will do it in 2024. Good. At least I would like to see the TORs, what it will analyze and how it will analyze. But here I would like to say that we don't have the shadow, we have the black hole. It's the transfer of funds, marketplaces, internet trading. I'm very much worried. I was still writing on the 24th of December to Minfin. I have not had any reply from the Minfin, what is being done. And we have to close gaps. Like for instance, if you are paying to IBAN, this is not in the code, this is not in the law on RRO. Why this explanation has been done by the tax office, I don't understand. I'm waiting when that I will come to ATB and they will say, we will not give you the receipt because the money is coming to IBAN. We have to close gaps now. We have some positive news regarding RRO. There are some good measures, but definitely not enough. A good block that really I like a lot is the engagement of territorial communities, the local authorities to control. That's very good, but the instruments are not prescribed. I think it is meant for the future. Of course, I'm ready to participate in that. That's very good that the chief of the Hromada, the village council, when they would see where he has the fueling station, the tobacco kiosks, who paid what, where RRO are standing, where not, they are interested in this because part of the money should go in the local budget, and that's where we could have a good positive change and improvement of revenues. The list, what I want to say, Serhiy said about it, about the integrity of the taxation office, but the measures with which it is being achieved. But execution of the anti-corruption program, supposedly all of the items that we already have the good integrity of the taxation office. And the second is survey once per 2 years among taxpayers using the funds of the World Bank. And these are the measures for the integrity of taxation. There is no decreasing of discretion. I mean, there is still room for improvement. But again, I would like to once again say thank you that it's been put together, that you have fulfilled the structural beacon of IMF, that you have a good loan strategy for 7 years with which you can work. That's a good job. Thank you, Igor. Then I would like to ask Olena Volska, the managing partner and the partner at EBS. And Ms. Olena, please be laconic. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I will be laconic in order to understand. I'm just thinking why we have been invited. EBS is the company that gives services for accounting, and among our clients, there are a lot of big taxpayers. Sometimes it's quite big international companies. On the other hand, I'm also a consultant and I'm very much familiar with the Ukrainian business. So we do understand all the peculiarities with which the Ukrainian business has faced. I support this strategy and I support that it is being presented to us and that is being discussed with the society, with the civil society. I have not had enough time to read it all, but I would like to say a few words which I found missing. One painful issue still remains painful, and I have not seen how it is regulated. This is the issue related to VAT administration. It remains very difficult, and as the process administration of VAT requires a lot of resources, it decreases the possibility to automate, to make it really uh, like automatic processing, and it's much more expensive compared to what it costs in the European countries. Understanding that will be very painful for the state of going away from the first point. If we do harmonize our legislation with the European, I just simply don't understand how we can't help doing it. So we do need to simplify the process of VAT administration. Also, if we are talking about the bringing people out of shadow, then we should search for other balances. In my opinion, the first where we have the disbalance is the system of penalties, which very often is not proportionate, not fair to those actions which brought to this um, penalties, especially what concerns VAT. This is something that we should really pay attention to. In the same way, the system of penny is the percentage for using the funds that the business is paying. And if there is any precedent that such usage of the state money did take place, there is no reverse mechanism. Very often to all of these advance payments, which the state is using the money of the business, there is no reverse mechanism. We should think about it. Then what concerns the bringing out of shadow the income of individuals, that's where I very much support Igor idea that people would definitely start to file their declarations. This will change the potential load on the government versus from what it is foreseen in the strategy, but the engagement of banks as the subject of the financial monitoring, that they can really do, that they really can demand declarations in order to check revenues. This will be a significant step also in the process of administration and in the fairness of this question. Definitely the idea itself of bringing, taking out this simplified approach that brings the business into shadow, of course we support that. We understand that this will be a huge taxation load for those who use this as a scheme. This will really increase the taxation load, but we have to correctly sell this idea, because it's very important that every industry would get out of shade in its entirety until we have some unfair aspects that some will get out of the shade and some will not. We will have the resistance from the society, and exactly from that society who doesn't pay taxes. More, by the way, when we come back to the issue of penalties, it's a shame that this unfairly high penalties are placed on the ones who are actually paying the taxes. The ones who are in the shadow, they remain out of these penalties. And number three, if we look at the idea of introducing the progressive rate for the income tax, the availability of this progressive rate logically demands some adequate untaxed base. So changing this untaxed base to some benefit, and the question of the administration of that benefit, its receipt, it's very much intransparent what is seen in the document, and the question is of trust of the society to this benefit, to the process itself, could be
Ні,
quite
у вас
actual as
30
well.
секунд.
Miss Olena, you have 30 seconds.
Ви прямо вже закінчили.
Я вже, це основні пункти.
Я зразу скажу,
That's
що хто
mostly it.
просить до представників Мінфіну і
I would like to immediately say, if you want to any representatives of the Ministry of Finances or the Taxation Office, if you want to reflect immediately, because there were some questions. Please allow me in few words to react. If we do analyze what has been said by Igor and by Olena, definitely, without any doubt, we will definitely introduce the system of VAT administration, which is in the European Union. We will not be able to avoid that. We don't have alternatives for that. And honestly speaking, we don't have any wish to protect somebody or to keep the system. We only have one wish, that we will not have any holes in the budget and we will be able to finance the society. That's our basic instinct that is guiding us. But again, we have to understand that any changes, that there has to be quite systematic. And really, in the European countries, they're working on some new type of administering VAT. There is no system of blocking the taxation bills, but there is also the authority, wide discretionary authorities for the taxation office. And is it better? Is it worse? This is a big question. In the context not of the mechanism itself, but exactly what Serhiy has said from the beginning, something that we will start this execution of this strategy until it is approved, from reforming the taxation office itself, reforming the customs office, the BEP, because these problems are not in closets, the problems are in our heads, as the classic writer said once. So the change, the principal change, the significant change in approaches to administering in the structure and the risk-oriented approach, it will give us the possibility to implement, even to expand the discretion of the controlling authorities, regulatory authorities. This will not be about misuse. This will be about the work aimed at fair and adequate taxation. And definitely, we in this context, we should really be very much the same as it is in the European countries. We can't have it two. It is either the European Union system or nothing. And we will be implementing this system. We will take it as a whole in its entirety. Of course, we will adapt it, but we will take it in its entirety with all the pluses that are there for the business and with the disadvantages which will be perceived by business as something that with some concern. Therefore, this approach, we have to share this approach with us, because we, even more than you, we want to reform the fiscal authorities in this country and to make sure that people are satisfied with them. Thank you, Danylo. let me pass the floor to Vasil Danylyuk from OKO. Chief Mr. Vasil, please talk briefly as well. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Definitely, the availability of this document is very much necessary because it's not possible to make any changes. It's not possible to make any systematic changes, not having a very clear long-term understanding why you're doing and for what you're doing and what will not work. For me, as the representative of business, first of all, I'm interested what was said by the colleagues that the implementation of new systems, the new system of administration, be it changes to the some taxes, it should not really destroy the competition, because the main idea is the expansion of the taxation base and getting more for the budget. But from the other hand, we should not forget that we should not really make problems with the competition. That in the first place is about the proper administration of the taxes that we have today. So I would not agree with that there should be a progressive rate in the taxation of income tax. This I would agree, this is logical, but maybe this the implementation of this progressive rate for the income tax, it should be, in the first place, we should have the full understanding that the simplified system works correctly, and the simplified system is not being used by the ones who should not be using it. That's in the first place. Myself, as the representative of the industry, of the oil business, I'm very much interested in the harmonization of excise taxes. Yes, it is necessary, but we also, in the same way, somewhere together with our colleagues, we should work in a way from the donor countries and those countries from the European Union whose legislation we will be harmonizing to. Let it be some coefficient to GDP per capita, where maybe we will be looking at various excise rates. I mean, you can't cover with 400 or 500 excise taxes in a country where the packages are different 4 or 5 times from the average European country. Of course, we should also keep that in mind and take into consideration. Also, it's important to pay attention. Maybe I have not read through all the document, but it is foreseen the transition of the agrarian business to this general system of taxation. In the same way, we have to understand here that this is the indirect benefit that our budget was giving to the agrarians. So if we do take away this benefit, we understand that in the European Union, they also have various systems of subsidies for the agrarian business, which make it balanced, that the agrarian company is exercising the general terms. So if our Ministry of Finances, our committee should also pay attention to that. If we take away this benefit, so there has to be some subsidy in some other place. Otherwise, the overall spirit of this document is very much correct. So that we have there some possibly things which should be additionally worked on, that is no doubt about it. Of course, this will be worked on in the due course, because the implementation of the provisions of this document, it's not a single time to be done. It's going to be done within 7 years, so it will be enough time to work on that and implement it, but to make sure that this document has come up and really does look like a good scientific work. It's very good also for the business and for its long-term planning.
Пане Василю, дякую вам.
Thank you, Mr.
Я
Vasil,
передаю слово
and I'm passing the floor to
Антону
Anton
Харитонову,
Kharitonov,
представнику
the
Національної
representative of the
асоціації.
National
Після
Restaurant
чого буде
Association of
коротко
Ukraine, and then we
бліц
will
Q&A,
come
щоб
to
подивитися
some
запитати.
quick
Дякую.
Q&A so we can cover this.
А я б тільки перепрошую, бачу
I
підняту
apologize. I can see the raised hand of Svitlana.
Будь ласка.
Svitlana, please.
Ви хотіли, я так розумію, відреагувати.
The microphone.
У вас мікрофон.
Вибачте. Я хочу відреагувати на
Yes, I would like to reflect to certain questions because they are being repeated, so we will not waste time later on that. Just a few words. The most painful issue, which is of concern to everyone, Igor mentioned a bit, and Ms. Olena, it's this banking secret and the participation of banks in administering the income tax for individuals. I would like to say that everybody would understand in the same way. In Europe, in the world, there is no banking secret for the taxation authorities. There is the issue related to the protection of information and the professional attitude towards information that is not allowing to use the access to information for the creation of ungrounded pressure on business. I'm just trying to pick up some words in a very tolerant manner, but you understand what I'm talking about. So whenever you're talking with our international donors, consultants, partners, they at first don't understand what is this. No access for the taxation, about the volume of income for the revenue for the individuals or the businesses. So let us already try to use the terms which are very much more applicable for this particular discussion. We are not trying to cancel the bank secret. The strategy is aimed at making sure that we can give additional possibilities to the taxation office to see the revenues that are subject to taxation, with that to limit systematically the additional possibilities for the additional pressure on business once they have such an instrument. How it will look like, Mr. Igor, I very much agree with you. Olena, I agree with you. It's the possibility of giving the banks the status of the taxation agents that's already implemented in the project, which is e-residency. It's for the first time in the history of Ukraine. Our banks are called taxation agents. Danylo can confirm this. This was done conscientiously. We went on to see how it is possible to implement or not. Yes, it is possible. This would be one of the ways to be discussed. That's the answer to this claim about this banking secret and how it will be implemented. Number two is this mandatory filing of declarations. Of course, we have such an obligation for all people, so we have to make. It's very difficult. It's not realistic to make people to make declarations. People don't have enough knowledge. They don't have enough access to the electronic services of the taxation office. So the strategy contains such a direction as the what we call the preliminary declaration on the basis of data based on the revenues of individuals. And this is very much European direction. Today, this is implemented in Europe, in the US. And as an example, I can give you, this is the Baltic countries, Lithuania, where the declaration becomes what we call the concurrence of what the taxation office has calculation. And yes, this will be the way to this mandatory declaration. What concerns VAT, Danylo has already mentioned, but I would like to add that the systematic reformation of VAT administration in the framework of harmonization to the European system, it can only be done once we have the decision about the deadlines of framework, the timing for our accession to the European Union, because in Europe, VAT is calculated differently, not like we do it, because there are no borders within the EU. The borders are only of the European Union, and therefore they account it and they administer it, VAT, in a different way compared to what we do. And this will bring to the fact that we will have to completely rebuild of our electronic VAT administration. When it happens, in the strategy, we conscientiously did not put the correct timing, the proper timing. We did not put a very clear concept because we still don't have yet the understanding when we should start building this. Without accession to the EU, we can't transfer to this European system of administration because we will simply not be given access to this system. And it's very important. We have to understand this. What concerns the harmonization of assets, we do have some obligations in the association agreement. All of our obligations are confirmed about the implementation of I'd like to pay the attention of all present, and I believe that this information will be shared because we not always understand this harmonization in a very correct manner. This desire of getting some minimally foreseen excise taxes that supposedly we will be equaling to the European rates. No, this is not the case because the European rates, they for a long time go over the minimum and the average one. So we will not go to the minimum European rates. And that's very logical because you said it yourself, because for other parameters, we will not be getting equal to the European Union. But again, the minimum rates, that's our obligation. And I believe that this should be the condition of our accession to the EU. And we should say about it today to you, and you should be ready for that. What concerns the agrarian business, if you paid attention, I'm calling you to read. Nobody says about the overall agrarian business that will be transferred or they will be not allowed to continue to work on the simplified system. For the individuals, for the small business, for the small farmers, the simplified system will continue to work. There will not be... It's written in such a way that within 3 years, the legal entities, including in the agrarian business, not only agrarian business, but all legal entities, they should be taken away from this simplified system. It's not only because we believe that this is important to bring the simplified system to its sources, why it was invented in the beginning, this simplified system, but also because we are trying to harmonize our legislation, namely corporate taxation, to the rules of the European Union and to best world practices, because as of today, we do have such initiatives as Pillar 2 and other initiatives that will be limiting our intentions, the inflow of the investment to Ukraine, and they will make our effort trying to engage investment into Ukraine, they will bring it to zero if we do have such a system. Because I can tell you one thing. For instance, the initiative of Pillar 2, if somebody knows, maybe somebody doesn't know, I will tell you. In Europe, they're introducing the only single corporate tax for 15% for the mother companies. If the capital enters Ukraine and if it's not a subject to corporate tax with this 15% rate, it will be paid in the source country, and in such a way it will not be interesting to bring this money into Ukraine, and Ukraine will not have the investment profit from that. That's a short response to the questions that we have raised today. In more detail, I can do that in separate meetings. Anton, the floor is yours. I represent the Restaurant Association. Unfortunately, the Restaurant Association doesn't have a single vision what we would like to be in terms of taxations, because all of us go to restaurants and we understand that this is the sector of that is working on the simplified taxation system. So we are in the official, but it's very difficult. We are working a lot for cash using FOBs, etc., etc. So the position of these members of association that they're against of what is being proposed, and any additional taxation load for them is really a big horror. I'm one of the founders of the association. Let me still voice my own position. I am the owner of a small restaurant network and B2B outsourcing company. I understand the situation in a very principled way with the taxation from the segment that goes via FOBs. We have the physical flows of cash have not been dry, so there's a lot that is not going to taxation. So we can see that finally this is the document for 6 years. Thank you for this possibility. This is beautiful, and thank you for creating this by the Ministry of Finances and the Taxation Committee. What concerns the restaurant? Let me give you a very short vision of the segment of economy in which I'm working. If you can imagine our economy in a very simplified manner, we will have the white segment, the big companies, monopolies like Coca-Cola, who are paying taxes, providing exports from Ukraine, and that's where we're getting this incoming VAT. But the other part, this which is very much oppositional to it, is the part that is working factually as a black. Mostly it's retail, Horeca, and FOB is our mandate so that we can work this. And another third, which is tied between them. So from the point of view of this part that is generating all this cash and creating this internal flows with which we have to fight. For everybody, it's important, the value of the business. Of course, when you're working with the big network, it's nonsense when there is no auditing of this. Of course, everybody would want to have it, but it's not possible because via FOBs, the difference will be like 25% if you come to the general system of taxation. So if you buy from Metro 40%, the officially registered people, I mean 20-25% will be the difference, but the rules have to be the same for everybody. Therefore, along the chain, when we talk about any producer who has VAT, once again, they are trying to find a way not to pay all the VAT. So my personal idea as the Restaurant Association, of course, we want to stay as FOPs. Personally, I'm for paying taxes because it's the value of the business, it's transparency. The logic is as like this. If we look at, oh, by the way, one more thing, considering that we need to get rid of this international assistance, we understand that it will not be possible, we will not be able to get. So over the 6 years, we will not have any compensations, but we can increase the taxation base, engaging this 35%, as IMF says, of the black economy into legalization, and the restaurant business is a good example, which, in my personal opinion, we should do. We have to look at Europe. In Europe, we have the diversified VAT rate. For instance, in Poland, it's 8% with the base rate of 23% for the whole segment or the chain, because it will be manipulations in any case. So, like for instance, we have 7% for pharma or for hotels. So the idea is, if in the national strategy we have seen various levels of rates based on the types of activity, this will not entice the getting out of shadow. All the cafes, all the restaurants will continue work either as FOPs or via cash. But if we do make an option, like for instance 7%, and you can be in FOP 7% with the simplified taxation, or LLC with the differentiated rate for HoReCa and for supermarkets. Using the example of Poland, 8 was the basic rate of 23. So this will bring the fact that either you pay this 70% or you are closing this chain and you're buying all the products with VAT and also paying 7%. And then you have the rent with, roughly speaking, this will really destroy the VAT chain. So if the taxation will be some 0 or some small plus, the state will not get enough from that. But closing this chain and taking away the ones who are not doing right, this will be a good step to improving the overall situation. And this is also a measure to take out. It's what has been said, 35% is in the black market, at least for medium and big companies, because everybody wants to be legalized, audited, and as the business should have its value. That's my business. If Serhiy gives me another 15 seconds, yes, I would agree with the speakers who said before that it's not possible without making mandatory declaration for individuals and, of course, the indirect control over the taxes and revenues of individuals, because there will be no pressure on official registration. If we do the diversified VAT, the issue related to proper salaries is not going anywhere. Somebody has reminded the position of control of communities over their territory, and that's where I have the PhD research from Poland. If we take conditionally, if we also engage the chief of the Hromada, and they would control that the business that is on the territory of this community, cafes, businesses would have these fiscal registrators. If not, this fiscal registrator will stand behind. Yeah, they should be interested. The chief of the community, the business and the community, they should get together. This will create a good society, because everybody is trying to be away. When the chief of the Hromada will pressure the business to put these cash registers, and he will say, where is my infrastructure? People will pay 7%. for this taxes, where did this money go? So we will get the nation and the community. But again, this is the important part. Thank you for your performance, Ms. Svitlana. Do you have another hand, or it's from the previous time? I think my hand will be raised all the time. I would like to thank to Anton, but I also want to reflect to the latest that he said. The point is that the extension of the authority for the self-governance bodies, it means administration of local taxes, not others. So what you're proposing, unfortunately, doesn't work today. We don't have enough the taxation culture. And secondly, unfortunately, corruption is not only with the state authorities, but it's also in the self-governance bodies. This is the example, like the retail excise regarding the tobacco that is coming to this local budget. But this has not brought to the legalization sales of the tobacco. No Teta Masha will come to the kiosks and will demand that everything should be sold via the cash registers, so it will all be very much traceable. So part of this excise tax would go to the local budget. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. So to work in this direction, we will do this, but not today. That's why, while we're working with the local taxes, we'll see how it will be implemented. Not all the self-governments authorities are ready to take this as an obligation. Let us learn how to do this properly. Thank you, Svitlana. I apologize. A very small comment to Svitlana. I absolutely agree with you. I'm from the city of Dnipro. You know who is the mayor of the city? When our mayor sees that from all retail business on the territory of his city, 25% comes to the budget that he is talking about. So this will be this corruption that you're talking about. So with the official or unofficial methods, they will pressure to put this cash registers. Of course, there will be some temporary consequences, but again, this VAT chain system will be closed. Let's come to, because we do have a lot of questions, something that was already mentioned by the community and a lot of commentators. Here, it's the question a little bit more political, so I will address it to Serhiy Marchenko. Serhiy, do you think that the implementation of this strategy will it influence the DSCT, knowing the long-term obligations of the state? Look, whenever we are taking any taxation regimes, and then when we are reconsidering, then we have to be consequential. If in some period of time we adopted these taxation regimes, we have to give some time that this regime would implement itself. So definitely nobody is planning to reconsider DSCT, but that doesn't mean that we will not introduce measures which are foreseen in the strategy, including the taxation with this progressive rate and other ways of taxation. I'm very much thankful to the participants. I have not reflected yet. I thought there will be a lot of controversial ideas related to taxation with Danylo. We expected some interesting discussions, so I'm very much thankful to the community for understanding the role of business in paying taxes. So I would like to say that we are going through a very difficult transformation period, and the societal awareness of the necessity to pay taxes and the responsibility of the state, it's that narrative that will be in the near future very much in the trend, because we have the war. If we didn't have the war, then we would be engaged in various stories, but now the level of society and the level of keeping the state in its sense, it's very much determined by the payment of taxes. So I'm very much thankful to all the participants for these comments. I'm ready to discuss it in essence, because as answering your question, we will not reconsider those regimes which we implemented recently. Thank you, Serhiy. So please reply shortly, Alexander Betli, because the introduction of VAT for micro and small companies will be painful. Will you increase the limit where it makes an important sense to register as the VAT payer? And connected to this is the issue related to SOFT, considering that all VAT payers will have to be forced to file SOFT. Do you plan to have some simplified option for the small business, maybe some software for the small business, especially for that? That's most likely to Minfin in the first place. Let's talk about this threshold. Of course, we understand raising the threshold for the VAT, it's the loss, it's the direct loss for the budget. So today we will not do this, but to consider such issue, of course, we will do this, but it will be considered in the context of expanding the base for the VAT. Speaking even more, if we do implement a very viable control over the revenues of individuals, entrepreneurs, and legal entities, that is the control over the movement of funds, the ones that we're talking about, and we will expand it the taxation base, then we can also say about increasing the threshold for the VAT payers. This should be in the context. This should be connected, because we can't tolerate that if we're collecting everything possible for the army, we can't tolerate the loss of the budget. Increasing the threshold of VAT would be the direct loss for the budget. That's number one. Number two, to make sure we will not have the distortion of competition at the expense of payers or non-payers of VAT, the strategy foresees to disseminate the obligation for the payment of VAT, not only for the general system, but also for the simplified system. This is also a very much general European practice that's in the Directive 112, and we will be also heading towards that. When that happens, how quickly that happens, this will also be considered only in the context of the overall reform. What concerns the SOFT for the VAT payers, I can tell you immediately that today this is already a norm from the taxation code, but considering the European practice, the submission of SOFT file, there is no necessity to require this from small and medium business. For instance, in the European countries, they have this minimum threshold for filing of SOFT. It's 300,000 euro. I believe that in the course of discussion of very specific legislative norms, we will also come to the point that we will install some minimum threshold for submission of SOFT. What concerns the unification or the simplification of SOFT, it's quite simple. It is already based on those systems of accounting, the automated accounting that are there on the market. It is adapted, it's harmonized. So the ones who are working with electronic systems of this accounting, for them, it's not a problem to put together SOFT. When we talk about some free software, it's more to the taxation office. That's a technical question. That's the service. So they will have to explain this. If there is such a necessity, then yes, of course, this will be done. Yes, you have reminded us about the softy file. We actually have two draft laws in the Cabinet of Ministers related to the implementation of softy files. We are not considering these draft laws on purpose because we don't want to have the same situation that our taxpayers had in the past when we are adopting something and then we start to implementing it and we are facing something that we have not foreseen. So we decided to go the other way. Today we have had the tender using the funds of our partners. The company is developing softy file, and in 2024 it will move to its testing on some big taxpayers with some volunteers. We already have such volunteers. So detecting mistakes in this program and in this particular mechanism, we will be able to foresee well in advance the correct regulation at the level of the law. Exactly, for the small business and even for the medium business, a certain part of the medium business, it's not foreseen to submit it. But softy file, it's not the additional report that you have to do it with your own hands. And you're trying softy file is the program instrument which is foreseen by the state, which allows you, when you have your accounting in Midolko 1S, when you with one pressing of key you are uploading it, then you are checking this in accordance with the algorithms. The tests, actually, we have some hundreds of them. You see where you have in red, you can correct these mistakes or not correct these mistakes. And the taxation office, on the basis of these tests, will analyze their reporting and will ask these questions remotely by email for risks that are highlighted by the software. So this mechanism foresees minimization, almost full minimization of checks, of on-the-job checks. So this is not this is like simplification of all of the issues for the entrepreneurs, and this is one of the mechanisms which we have to fight for a long time, combining the efforts of the business. Thank you for the replies, and it's very good that it will be tested voluntarily on some big taxpayers, because the key remarks is the changes in legislation are often not fixed with the changing of the mechanism for the they can be controversial, and very often these changes they take away the necessary resources for their implementation. So I believe that everybody wants to make sure that the solutions that are given, that they are already well thought through and they will not require any further changes. I have a question from Olena Hetman: why the strategy doesn't foresee the high quality reloading of state custom service and state tax service, and why it is believed that this point-to-point measures that we had done dozens of times will produce a better result versus previous year? Why we can't really, in a high-quality manner, reload this too? Who wants to take this? About legislation, it's my question. We have 3 draft laws, but Mr. Hetman knows about it. BEP, Customs and Taxation Office. So why Customs is taken in the first reading. The taxation is not yet taken. The only thing that is limiting us, it's the key aspect without which this draft laws will not be beneficial, they will be even harmful. That's the participation with the internationals, participation of internationals in commissions. In BEP, we have such a concurrence, and we have even a requirement, a demand from IMF. So that's why we're moving it. If we talk about customs and tax authority, we don't have yet such an opinion. We're still thinking about it. We're still negotiating with our international partners, so we can discuss this micromanagement level. But once we have this agreement, and if the internationals do participate in these commissions, and this will be a good prerequisite for the transparencies, of course, that will be adopted immediately. I can see Serhiy Marchenko's head. Yes, I wanted to also to comment. Thank you, Danylo. We always, it's not always the issue of people and staff. It's not all the time defining everything. When we talk about the bodies, what we would call the system from forming bodies, the reshuffling of staff at the high level doesn't really influence the work of the lower bodies. I mean, I have seen it as a minister. Most important is the implementation and engagement of procedures and algorithms that would allow to those available staff who are working to do their work, to fulfill their functions in a high quality manner, to have integrity and to create the fair business environment. This is much more important. So it's not important who is actually occupying the position at the customs or taxation office. Of course, it's important from the state point of view, but from the point of view of the functions, it's more important that this body will fulfill the procedures. So this question, I believe, is implemented in the strategy, and we will work actively on that throughout the next period of time. Thank you, Serhiy. Thank you, Danylo. We have another question, which is connected to how will the progressive rate for the income tax be built? What will be the main philosophy for these changes? Serhiy, that seems also to you. Svitlana will add. I can only say that for me it's probably the biggest controversial measure, because I remember 2016, I remember in which conditions we had the single rate of taxation and what was before that. The result of the implementation of this has showed its effect regarding the revenues to the budget. And I don't think this was a mistake at that time, transferring from the rate which we had to the single rate. But from the side of our partners and from the side of the society, we have more and more about the fairness of taxation revenues. And this fairness foresees certain types of rates. We are not ready to discuss this progressive taxation rate. I can't tell you at the moment which rate it should be, which scale it should be. This is the issue, even in theory, has a lot to go through, a lot of discussions. But the question about this public fairness, it's a quite acute question. It is fact. So in one way or the other, the progressive taxation rate will one day appear in Ukraine. Thank you. Svitlana, would you like to add something? I can only confirm, because the author said which principle was put inside. I can tell you, this is the European principle, which, to put it briefly, that the rich shall pay more. That's the basic slang that our European partners put inside to what Serhiy is telling to us in terms of fairness. Yes, we are not ready to move to this differentiated scale. We will keep the flat rate for the time being until we can find the way to effectively administer revenues. We don't want everybody to become poor after this one-time implementation of this grading scale. So our objective would be that we should be able to control revenues, and we should talk about moving to this differentiated scale. How it will be also the point for the discussion. It's too early to talk about it, but the declaration is as follows. We are declaring it. We are declaring the intentions to move to the more transparent, more fair taxation. How it will be, it's too premature to say. Please tell us, in the strategy you have foreseen from 3 to 17% different rates. How many of such rates do you plan? Maybe not for each type of activity, but the overall logic, a little bit more than it was written in the strategy. Yes, I can tell you. By the way, I can also reply to the question about the discussion, public discussion. I can tell you that we worked on this strategy for almost 9 months. In all of these 9 months, we had consultations not only with our donors, our experts, but also we tried to systematize all the proposals and all those achievements that we have received from the business from the last 3-4 years. And honestly speaking, and the concept of reforming this is also the proposal from business, and Oleg Hetman, he remembers when we discussed this. So we have taken as the basis the Polish taxation system for the small and medium business. It is exactly in Poland. They have this differentiated system. They have quite a lot of rates from 2 to 17%. I think even more, 20, I think, if I remember correctly. The rates are changed from time to time, depending on the economy of the process. The biggest rates come to types of activities such as where they have the least costs, like for instance services. It's something that these types of activity that, to put it in a very tolerant manner, that are used for the substitution of the labor relations with FOBs in order to really equal the competitive environment, so it would be in the same way profitable to work with the hired employees. That's why they're entering and introducing these rates. How many of such rates will be? It's also a subject of discussion. We have an approximate list of such rates, but this will not be introduced at the same time. This will be discussed in a much more wide discussion with business. We will exchange opinions, calculations, and I'm sure that this will be a public process, and in its basis we will have the proposals which we have already now related to the introduction of the differentiated rates in the simplified system, plus the European experience, especially Polish. Thank you, Svitlana. Can we have another 15 minutes? Because we have quite a lot of questions. If speakers do have some time, let us take another 15 minutes. Do you plan any changes from the income tax? I mean, that's a general question. The company that is working using some general rate, 18%, should they expect any changes? Let me also expand this with another question, which would be the advice to the business, which companies, how they should be prepared for this innovations, how we should reformat our work. Let me start, and maybe Svitlana can continue. Getting ready for our today's event, I opened up Financial Times, and in the last issue of Financial Times, the Commissar of the European Commission, Mr. Paolo, clearly defined what is expected in the European countries in terms of the income tax. He explained what is Pillar 1, Pillar 2, and what is not lower than 15% that will be implemented, how these corporations will be additionally taxed, the ones who are running the activity in jurisdictions which are expected as the ones that don't meet the rules. They will be having additional taxation in the origin countries. So very interesting moment. Interesting point. So we should be ready for that. So in case we are planning to become the European Union country, and I can see that we have this overall position that we want to be there, some certain rules which are already implemented or which are implemented at the global level, we should and we must implement. So I can honestly tell you, I am the fan of such approach, and I'm ready to discuss further in this system which approach is to be applied. Thank you. Very briefly, please. It seems to me that this discussion is complete in terms of the income tax. Definitely we will be implementing it. It's not only about pillar. We're talking about the implementation of the European legislation. It's anti-avoidance rules and many other aspects related to the European taxation mode, related to income tax. We don't have any other alternative. We don't have any other structures that once in a while would have the subject of this discussion around taxation office. There is a very clear roadmap, there are very clear requirements, so I would totally agree with the ministers. I would like to call to those who are writing your proposals, positions, please write them in the comments because we will be able to see them. We will, don't write them in Q&A. The question to Serhiy Marchenko, 438 item is foreseeing cancellation of all coefficients for the rent fee for the radio frequencies, and that unblocks multi-million investment. This project is prepared by the Ministry of Finances. When do you expect it to bring it to the Verkhovna Rada to be approved? If you say that we have developed it all in the draft law, I would like to ask Svitlana if she does know, do we plan to bring it to the government and when? I will not be able to give you the date, but once the government really accepts all our protocols, this will be very much in the closest time. I would also like to understand each other. I can foresee from whom this question has come. We don't have yet the concurrence of the DRS. After that, we will see that there are some coefficients increasing and decreasing. So about these decreasing coefficients, I can only support you. We should talk about it, but until the end of the war, the increasing coefficients are very unlikely to be spoken about, because this will significantly decrease the revenues for the budget. This we can't afford now.
Так, запитання ще
Good.
стосується
One more
оподаткування
question
нерухомого
that
майна.
concerns the taxation of the
Окремий
real
пункт
estate.
багато
We have a
аудиторів.
separate item in the national revenue strategy. This is the question
Які будуть
which
концептуально
would be
виглядати ці зміни.
how would these changes look like conceptually, and very specific question.
Чи плануються зміни в адмініструванні податку на нерухомість, відмінного від
Do you plan any
земельного
changes in
бо є досвід цього
administering
що
real
раніше,
estate
що
tax
часто
other than the land
є
plot
замість
tax?
прав на нерухоме майно є
Because very often the real estate property is not synchronized in all registers. I don't know whether it's true. Who has the obligations for payment of real estate tax? It's very clear that not always the taxation office knows about this property and doesn't send you the information for the payment. So yes, we do have such a problem. But in general, the question is more about what changes to be expected in the administration and in the philosophy of real estate taxation. Let me give you some overall philosophical context. We are discussing with Svitlana since a long time with this. This has to be one of the budget forming taxes in the local budgets, and this particular tax in the majority of the European countries, that's how it is done in the majority of the European countries, and it is the biggest source of revenues for the local budgets, and we are very much interested in the expansion of this by real estate tax. The only question is with which technical aids to implement this, because a lot of questions are arising. Really, the taxation service, in the majority of cases, is really not interested in working with the local taxes, and we have to talk about the system, who and how will form this taxation base, in which way to engage the self-governance bodies for this work, who will do the evaluation of this real estate objects, who will do this evaluation. I don't have the questions. I don't have the answers yet. We are ready to search for them together with all the participants. But from my point of view, I believe that this is that source that we have not worked all the way through, and we have to think about it. If possible, I will add to that. The one who wants to really become very clear what is the strategy, direction in this, working with this real estate. It's 4310 section on page 98. It's very much clearly written what has to be done to make sure we can reform the taxation of real estate as opposed to the land plot. I mean, this is residential or non-residential real estate. It is taxed right now with the square meters. It's very much clear written that we should move to a fair taxation of real estate by canceling land plot taxes and to make taxation based on their market fair value. For that, as Serhiy has said, it's important to create the system of evaluations and to fill the register. There are two problems there. First of all, it's filling the registers with objects of taxation, because there are quite a lot of them. A lot of data about these real estate objects are still in the paper format in archives and the local self-governed bodies. This is one of the questions: which bodies will be engaged as the beneficiaries of this resource, because the real estate tax, it's fully directed to local budgets. It's number one. Number two is conducting the massive evaluation, because even if somebody is in the register of real estate, it's not always that they have the value with the real fair value. So these are not the questions to the Ministry of Finances. The strategy is built in such a way, it's a state strategy, and it's not the strategy of the Ministry of Finances, it's the strategy of the government. So therefore, the other governmental institutions also have obligations based on the strategy to conduct their work. In that table, which I have mentioned about the KPIs for the measures of this implementation of this, it's not only the timelines and deadlines, but also the responsible institutions, state responsible institutions for this or that direction of work. So you can't reform the taxation of real estate other than landlords without, first of all, filling the register of real estate and without the evaluation of these objects. The real, fair evaluation. These are the two questions which have to be in front of any reform in this direction. So this is the fund of property fund, it's their question. Let me also add a few words. The decree of the president from the 21st of February, it says that the local self-government bodies have to make the inventory. So the self-governance local bodies, they have a lot in their hands. Therefore, number two, really today, this is the least effective tax of all, which we do have if we don't talk about some touristic taxes, etc. And 9 billion we have received in 2023, and that absolutely doesn't meet our expectations related to this tax. When we cancelled in 2019 the Anton Yatsenko sites, we have foreseen for the state property fund, and now the system is filled. We have foreseen the possibility of evaluation of real estate objects once they're sold as the basis for the payment of taxes. We've used the base of the state property fund, and even then we foresaw that this base, when it does get filled with the enough volume of real agreements, it can become the base for the possible of taxation based on the principles seen in the strategy. I don't think this road brings us to nowhere. I think we should improve this road. It definitely should have the fiscal importance in some period of time, but I would call for the self-governance bodies to work more with the taxation offices and in part related to delivering taxation messages, and most importantly is an inventory of taxation objects, because definitely the ball is on the side of the local self-governments. The time is up. Let us just 10 seconds. Ihor Diadiura, very quickly. Very shortly, I will say. Very important question. Svitlana, you can do this. Form 5DF. I was shocked fully. In SNAP, I changed the form of my address of registration, and I was forced to go to taxation and to changes. We have a lot of IDPs. Let us take away this. I also support what you're saying. When I was at the position, I was asking so they would find my real estate and they would pay this 13,000. Again, the taxation office doesn't have. One last question, which I want to ask from my side, considering if the national strategy of national revenue strategy will be implemented the way you foresee it, how will in 2030 be changed the structure of the tax revenues to the budget, which taxes will have a bigger share and which the smaller share, and how will it also influence the local budgets related to decentralization? This will be our last question for today.
До мене питання, я так
Is this the
розумію.
question to me? I
Першу чергу
understand.
до вас, напевно,
Yes,
Сергія Марченка.
to you and to Serhiy Marchenko.
Всі розрахунки, які
All
які
calculations.
Сергій Михайлович, давайте я скажу, тому що
Serhiy Mikhailovich, if you don't mind,
питання,
let me say
я
first,
так розумію, від тих,
I understand this is the question from the ones who were reading this strategy
Тут є
by
розділ,
pieces. We have a section
який,
here
повністю дає всі
which fully
економічні обґрунтування
gives
і
all the
те,
economic
і
justification
розуміння того, до
and
чого
understanding
і до якої мети повинна
what is the
досягти
objective to be reached by the strategy,
чи в цифровому і
both in digital
адміністративному
and administrative vision.
Ну, я пропонувала
So I would
прочитати,
suggest to please read this first
задавати питання,
and
тому
then
що
ask such
зараз
questions,
є
because yes,
на те, щоб збільшити
of course,
надходження
we
взагалі.
want
Якщо
to
ви
increase
збільшите ці
the
надходження, більше за рахунок,
proceeds
за рахунок
in general
розширення бази
by
оподаткування
expanding
і
the
суб'єктного складу,
taxation
залучення
base and the
до
composition
оподаткування
of subjects,
суб'єктів і
that is
об'єктів,
engaging
які
to
сьогодні
taxation of
об'єктивних
objects and subjects
причин
which
не
today are not
залучені
part of
або
this
не
yet
залучені
by objective reasons,
да, з об'єктивних, тому що
from objective reasons,
немає або інструментів,
because we either don't have the instruments or the legislation
legislation
allows to use the optimization schemes.
Так, щодо місцевих
Yes, what concerns the local self-governed bodies,
захід, який надасть можливість органам
the least measures that would give the possibility to the self-governance bodies influence on administering local tax, it should bring to the point of increasing the proceeds of local taxes, because today they are unjustifiably low. It is, to a large extent, is relied on the conscientiousness of the taxpayers, but the effectiveness is very low here. So to measure this, what revenues will be making bigger share, but the overall tendency is written in the economic strategy. It is quite a good analysis of the previous practices and what is planned to receive in the future. Serhiy, I will quickly comment. It's difficult to make any forecasts because we are really in a very complicated environment. We have a lot of uncertainty. If you would evaluate the forecasts that were made for 2023 and the fact, then you would see that we would have quite a lot of positive results of the work. Therefore, our expectations in this strategy, they are very much clearly shown. We are motivated to maximize the direct taxes from the sources of income, sources of revenue, the ones which are minimized through tax evasion. Therefore, without the figures, Yuri, we don't have such expectations regarding the digital ways. I would also take into account from the point of view of the reality. We are trying to base from GDP. We have the war, we have the situation what we have. So my expectations are mentioned. Of course, we have the calculations, but again, these calculations are based on our expectations, which we are forming now. Until 2030, very difficult to make clear expectations. Of course, we're interested in increasing the role of direct taxes. Thank you, Serhiy. Thank you to all the participants of this meeting. Thank you for finding 2 hours of your time to reply to this. I see that a lot remain without answers, but this communication is very much important. So many thanks to all of you who have been with us, who have been listening to us. This was almost at the almost full Zoom was there. Wish you quiet evening. This was the CAS event aimed at the National Revenue Strategy. See you.